November 7th, Board of Selectmen meeting. Will you all please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And first order of business, we have public comment from the Council on Aging. Who's going to, go ahead. Go right ahead.
We'll give you a
Yeah,
microphone. You want to sit by the
Mike
mic?
Mike can pass you over a microphone.
You can stand or sit, whatever works.
You can sit if you want.
Okay. Well, it's
like a little trophy.
Okay. Hi, my name is Laurel Pahalski, 125 School Street. And as the duly elected vice chair, acting chair of the COA board, I'd like to give you a quick update on our recent achievements. First, I would like to recognize our outstanding staff, Assistant Director Nisha Burke and Outreach Worker Maria Yagel, who received the Community Champions Award by the Seacoast Food Providers for their efforts in supporting food security for our seniors, an honor well deserved. The COA office and the food pantry have moved into offices with more space to serve seniors. The food pantry is now equipped with more shelving, a freezer, and a refrigerator. We appreciate all the donors who keep the pantry stocked to better serve seniors. With no Groveland COA meal site, Age Span sponsors Traveling Chef to our COA, which distributes meals to approximately 40 people each month. Recent COA-sponsored programs have been well attended, and we look forward to many upcoming events. The COA board and the staff would like to thank the generous Friends of the COA for their continued support in their fundraising endeavors, helping us to make necessary purchases and sponsoring programs which are not provided by other funding. We are still actively in the process of recruiting a new COA director. In the absence of an interim director, the board will be assisting the assistant director as much as possible to continue serving our elder community. More positive news is that we have 3 people who are interested in learning more about serving on the board and plan to attend our November 16th meeting as observers. We also welcome the public to take an interest in the COA as we go forward in our rebuilding intentions. And just, can I do a little plug for the Friends? If you haven't purchased one of their fundraising calendars, I won $50 by buying a ticket, so go for it. And then my ticket gets put in.
Okay.
Yeah, no, they just, boom, every day of the month of November, they
Okay.
pull a name.
I'll
It's
send
well
it.
worth it. I mean, I was like, I never win anything. So please do that.
Okay, thank you.
Pass it back.
Thank you. How many members are you down on the Council on Aging board?
Well, we have 4 members right now. The board used to have 5, and then we extended it to 7. So technically, we're down 3, and we have 3 people who actually, our secretary, Irene Thomas, who is unable to come tonight, and I kind of asked while we were doing early voting, as they came in, it was like,
Ooh,
hey,
good idea.
all the members vote. And these are the other members of our
Yeah,
board.
yeah.
Do you want to introduce?
My name is Marie Waller, and I've been a resident of Groveland 26 years. And I'm new on the board as well.
And my name is Larry McElhenney, and I think everybody knows I'm an employee of the town. We all found that out recently, and that all of us here are employees, and we're here on behalf of our constituency, which is the senior citizens of town, and we appreciate the support that we've gotten as we go through this transition period.
Thank you. Moving on, Jason, do you have the warrants?
Yes.
Thank you. No, we appreciate the update.
I'll make a motion to approve payroll warrant 2319 in the amount of $177,644.17.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? None. All in favor? 4 in favor, 1 absent. Bill warrants.
I'll make a motion to approve bill warrant 2319 in the amount of $1,240,657.08, which breaks down to the town $28,477.05, water and sewer $21,511.50, payroll withholding $41,553.58, light bills $86,038.64, grants and revolving $30,436.38, Pentucket assessment $1,032,639.92.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? None. All in favor? 4 in favor, 1 absent. Appointments of the board. Appointment of Edward Benu, 7 Star Road, as seasonal employee for the snow removal for the Highway Department, effective November 7th at the rate of $35.23 an hour. And we have the approval of the Highway Superintendent. Somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to appointment of Edward Vigneault of 175 Seven Star Road, Groveland, as a seasonal employee for snow removal for the Highway Department, effective November 7th, 2012, at a rate of $35.23 an hour.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just had a
Go
quick
ahead, Dan.
question. Oh, go ahead.
Go first.
I was just wondering, we have more than one person helping plow. Did we appoint them at the July appointments?
So this is an actual seasonal employee where a lot of our plowing help is through vendors.
Oh, so we're hiring this person for the winter?
That's correct. So they will be driving our truck.
Are they doing benefits or it's
It
seasonal?
is not, it's
So it's
just a
like the
seasonal.
mowing, okay,
Exactly.
I get it.
Go ahead, Dan.
I was gonna ask, is this a new position, a replacement of an old position? Or it's just a change of a way of doing business? And will it save money? I mean, is that what you,
From my understanding, there is the ability of the highway department during the summertime and the wintertime to take on seasonal help based upon the landscaping needs and the plowing needs. And so historically, there might have been 1 or 2 individuals who don't have trucks that will be hired seasonally by the town in order for them to help with their plowing services. So it would not be a benefit eligible position, just as much as the seasonal employees that were here over the summer did not receive any additional benefits. It is only temporary, and it is only on call as needed when there is a snowstorm,
it's per diem?
essentially.
And does it save us any money over the prevailing wage laws, doing it this way? Bringing it in-house instead of outsourcing?
I'm not entirely sure. I do know that this gentleman is local, and so he's very familiar with the area, and I believe the highway superintendent likes the fact that he knows enough to be able to get out on the road quickly. He's close to the yard, he can get in one of their trucks and move around.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's any other strategy there in terms of prevailing wage or whatnot. I know we don't have that many trucks, so I know we couldn't hire a bunch of different individuals. I know we have our laborers as it is who are in the trucks that we do have. So this is just kind of another local individual who is familiar, again, with the area and is able to respond quickly.
Right. One further question, if I may. And so this is just within a line item for snow plowing, and it's up to the
There's snow and ice.
the department head on that to monitor that and to call them in as needed and monitor that budget?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
If we didn't hire this person, we'd probably have to be hiring somebody, private contractor with, at a prevailing wage, plus the vehicle.
That's correct, and I believe that between fuel prices and also with the contracts that are out there, it's very hard to find the vendors these days that are and be competitive.
Okay.
Well, we do that more often. Just
We don't have enough trucks.
Right.
don't have enough trucks, all right.
And we're
Always
also
an
down
answer
a
to
laborer.
question, right?
So we still haven't filled one of those positions either.
So we need a body in every truck. What about front-end loaders?
Okay, there's no,
We already made a motion.
appointment, then there's a motion, who seconded it?
I did, I think. We're done.
Any other discussion? None. All in favor? 4 in favor, 1 absent. A vote to the board, accept the resignation of Catherine Alisi from the Council on Aging effective October 27th. A motion? And we have a letter of resignation.
I'll make a motion to accept the resignation of Catherine Alisi. from the
I'll
Council
second
on Aging.
that.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Um,
Go ahead.
Yes, I accept the resignation with regret. I've known Kathy Alisi for a long time. She and her husband had boys in hockey when I had boys in hockey. So we suffered through that together, and she's a good person, and I know she put her heart into it. I respect her choice here, but she will be missed, and truly thank her for her service to the town. And hopefully, maybe she'll come back in some capacity, future date. Thank you.
Okay, very good, and I echo those comments. Then we got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? None, all in favor? 4 in favor, 1 absent. Accept the resignation of Dorothy DeCara from the Council on Aging, effective October 31st, 2022.
I'll make a motion to accept the resignation of Dorothy DeCharia from Council on Aging, effective October 31st.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
And a second. Any discussion? Yes, go ahead.
Similar, I didn't know Dorothy or Dottie, I think, as she went by as well, but I knew her by face, as you do in this town, and again, she served the town well, and I know she poured herself into the position, and sad to see her go, and thank her very much for the time that she gave to this town.
Okay. Anybody else? No, we got a motion and a second. All in favor? 4 in favor, 1 absent. Next, property use permit. Tracy Guilford on behalf of the Groveland Congregational Church for the November 11th from noon to 9 p.m. and November 12th from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. at Perry Park for parking for their snowflake fair. And we have the permit from Tracy. The motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to recuse just because I'm a member of the church and I'm active. I did their audits and stuff, and
Okay.
so
I'll
stick
make a
back on
motion
this one.
to approve the property use permit for Tracy Guilford on behalf of the Groveland Congregational Church from November 11th, noon to 9, and 12th, 7 to 5 p.m. at Perry Park for parking for the Snowflake Festival.
Okay, is there a second? Dan?
I'll second that, yes.
A second. Then what they potentially, they want to use the spot over what used to be the ball field off of King Street. And they use that every year. Hopefully they won't get stuck. Was that last year? Yeah,
Oh, no.
yeah. That was a fiasco. All right, the motion and a second. Any discussion? None. All in favor? 3 in favor, 1 abstention, 1 absent. Property use permit, Jennifer Peterson on behalf of the Groveland Congregational Church for November 7th through November 13th to place an A-frame advertising the Snowflake Fair at Perry Park. And we have her application.
I'll make a motion for property use permit for Jennifer Peterson on behalf of the Groveland Congregational Church for November 7th through November 13th to place this A-frame sign advertising the Snowflake Fair at Perry Park.
Okay, any discussion? Is there a
I'll second it, I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor? 3 in favor,
Abstain.
1 abstention,
Thank you.
1 absent. Next. Property use permit, Salter Transportation for use of the parking behind the public safety building, and we have their application. Actually, it looks like 2. No, 2 different people. Is that for 2 buses?
It's actually for 3 buses.
Oh, okay. 3 buses to be parked behind the public safety building. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion for property use permit for Salter Transportation for the use of the parking behind the public safety building.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Well, yes, we have more than 3 buses there right now, right?
That's correct. We originally heard an application back in the summer for the other 3 buses. And these 3 buses were actually parked over at the municipal lot by the water building.
Yep.
And they were causing an issue with site visibility, and also maneuvering around the parking lot was not ideal. So they had asked for a different location with the other buses. So this is 3 more buses in addition to the 3 that we've already approved.
Okay.
Okay, makes sense? Go ahead.
And we did get confirmation that the excise taxes were being paid to the town.
That is
I
correct.
know.
6 buses are paying for the excise tax.
Yes,
Okay.
more money.
Anybody else? No.
That's good.
Okay, we had a motion. We have a second. I don't remember the second. Did we?
We did, didn't we?
I seconded
Dan
it.
did, I
Zach,
think.
Dan, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Might have mumbled, I'm sorry.
Okay. Motion and a second. Property use permit, Salter Transportation behind the public safety building. Any discussion? None. All in favor? 4 in favor, 1 absent. Thank you. Discussion and possible vote. Fiscal year 2024 capital improvement plan, and we have the paperwork that prepared by the town administrator, I assume.
Yes.
And give everybody a minute or 2 to look it over. If there's any, well, maybe you want to explain it?
Of course. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So essentially, in the past, we've come up with a summary of capital projects that we'd like to put forth for the fiscal year. And it is very important from a planning perspective to take that a step further. So, working internally, we sent out a request to ask departments what they would like for capital projects, and then we took it a step further and put together this spreadsheet. So, if you look up on the screen, the first page gives you a summary, and that's what you have included in your packet. And then moving forward, we've taken a look at our debt and what we have for overview of our debt with the school, water and sewer, as well as the town. We took that a step further, and we broke it down in long-term debt, so you can see the actual projections of what, in fact, I'm sorry? Oh, and the projection of our payments, both principal and interest, over the coming fiscal year, and exactly what we're looking at. And that, when we scroll down, it goes a little bit further in detail in terms of what we have for self-supporting debt, which is essentially what you have when you go through an enterprise fund and you're supporting that through rates. Then we have exempt and non-exempt, and that's when you get into debt exclusions and non-debt exclusions. So again, the debt that we have as part of the school is handled through the school, so it's a little separate. But at the same time, it's the taxpayers' dollars that go in to support those capital projects, so we have the breakdown of that. Some of this is, as you'll see, it says town share, so some of these projects are supported by all 3 towns, some of them are supported by just 2. So you'll see that different projects call for different things. And then again, it goes down further into some of our short-term bans that we have for some of our equipment and some of our other things that we've taken out on the past. And so you'll see there's a great deal of information that's being provided in terms of what we have for debt and what we're forecasting and what we're looking at currently. We take it a step further, looking at some graphs to show you exactly what we're looking at for the coming fiscal years, and it breaks it down as we had discussed in those categories of self-supporting, exempt, and non-exempt, and provides more detail for analysis. And then what we did was we took a look at our fleet inventory. So we took all of the vehicles that we have, and then we rated the condition and the cost of the vehicles. So you'll see that there's a fair amount of highway equipment that is actually inadequate and in poor condition. You can see just sometimes from the date, you're talking about a 1988 bucket truck. So there's a great deal of need in terms of what the highway fleet inventory has available to them. We look at equipment inventory. So again, we break it down and take a look at exactly what we have registered for insurance purposes, and then we look at the condition so that we can rate that. Again, the highway could use some help. Then we took a look more closely at the properties, and we took a look at what we need to do at at these specific properties. I will note again that we had not done a comprehensive capital plan in the past, so assembling this data is very comprehensive, and it's a lot of work to kind of go through and identify what our needs are, since they haven't really been identified for quite some time. So we have had some assessment through some of our buildings where, you know, electricians will come in and say, listen, you really need to be updating this. But as you can see, there's a lot of properties that we own that we haven't necessarily had that done at. The cemetery, Washington Hall, while we lease it, it's still our building, so we haven't really done a comprehensive analysis on exactly any assessment needs that we need at that particular location. I know that a big chunk of community preservation funds were used at one point to help renovate that building, but again, we need to make sure that we're maintaining it over the course of the year, so trying to get that information into this document and into the conversation so that we can make sure that we are prioritizing these upgrades and maintenance needs as we move forward. This is specifically what was provided by the Bagnell School in terms of their capital improvement and their forecast plan. So you can see that they've,
Excuse me, can you make that larger?
ooh, too big. That better?
Is it like a one font?
Well, on the printout it is, but
Yeah, I need like a microscope.
it
Want the
was,
file?
when I sent out the email, I recognized that, so I sent it out in an Excel spreadsheet so that you guys could use the document a little bit more. It's hard to print out and get a clear picture when you're looking at it, when you try and get it into like a Word or a printout. But I can definitely try and play with the format and maybe put it on like an 11 by 17 or something.
Legal paper.
There you go.
Like
Or a step bigger.
A 10 font
Okay,
for old people.
okay, you got it.
Thank you.
So this is what they had provided in terms of their capital plan. It's set up a little bit differently, and these are estimates. One of the things that was really challenging is that a lot of the projects that we tried to identify, we tried to get actual quotes so that we would be realistic in identifying the financial need, and not necessarily just, oh, we'll just throw $600,000 at it, that should cover it. And I know that with the school, they struggle to get some quotes, so a lot of these are more so estimates as opposed to actual cost value. We then took a look at some of the smaller projects that were under the $10,000 capital threshold, and we added those, things that we need to identify, things that we need to look at installing and moving forward. We took the ARPA projects that we had funded that were capital projects under that met the threshold, but yet, met the requirements, but maybe not the threshold, and identified those as part of that. And then for each individual request that came through, we put together a project sheet detailing the scope, the project need, the life expectancy, what is being requested for funding, and what fiscal year it could potentially go or be funded in. And so it goes through extensive pages of information that we can review a little bit more closely. And that sheet, and all those project sheets tie to the summary sheet, which will give you the overview of exactly what we have. Again, the school side of things is trying to work with the school facilities coordinator to get the expected life and to get more of the information relative to cost, but we did put it in there so that we could get a better understanding, because we do own the Bagnell School, so we are responsible for making sure that the school has the infrastructure in place. And then the last piece of it is that taking a look at what we have for revenue to put forward with addressing some of these concerns. So we have certified free cash, which is not the official, this is just an estimate as of now for the free cash that we're calculating for fiscal year '22. And then we also have our stabilization fund balance, and then we have our capital stabilization fund, and then obviously, as we've been discussing, American Rescue Funds have been utilized for capital projects because they are one-time funds, and we strongly recommend that if we are going to be utilizing those funds, that they be utilized for those types of operations and not for anything that's reoccurring.
Questions?
Yes.
Go ahead.
On here, it says, design and install, replace all potable water, plumbing fixtures with certified lead-free materials, school facilities, $250K. I thought we knocked that down to about 80 and change.
That's 85, yeah, the $85,000 that we allocated as part of the ARPA funding, that's correct. So what I did was I put it as part of what they had requested, and I still, like I mentioned, need to go through with the facilities coordinator and get more specifics in terms of what they're thinking, because there seems to be a little bit of the Board of Selectmen are making decisions about the school that they own, and then the school is operating the school, so, and maintaining it on a day-to-day basis. So we're working with the facilities coordinator, Bob Danforth, in order to implement these projects. We're not implementing them ourselves. So there's a need to enhance communication and figure out exactly what the Board of Selectmen is doing and making sure that the school is aware and that we're working collectively on that instead of them providing something and then us making a different decision and it conflicting. But you are correct.
So is this gonna be revised once you have the estimates?
I'm gonna.
Some of these numbers, I mean, whatever I see, even numbers, $680,000 for, public safety building roof.
So that's an actual estimate that we received.
That's what a roof costs?
So for the entire roof, the fascia boards and all of that, that is correct.
Might wanna get some bids on that one. That's monster. And, $350 for, design and install, replace classroom unit ventilators. Is that what that says?
That's correct.
$350,000?
That is, again, something that the school had put forward, so I would need to
Yeah, I
confirm.
thought when they did the renovations at the Bagnell, they did the HVAC system. Is it something different?
I don't believe they did the whole HVAC system.
No?
I know there was, like we had talked about with the debt, there was the HVAC or the boilers, but that was for the middle school, high school. And then there was the Bagnell School Green Repair, and that was something that took into consideration the roof and the heating system, but I'm not sure if it was the entire one. That's why, again, working with the school, it would be really important to have that sit down with the facilities coordinator and actually get a better understanding of what they've done. Because that part I wasn't here for, so it's hard to figure out what they're doing when our records are not really detailed.
So it looks like we need all new roofs on the fire department, the police department, the library. I mean, looks like where all the big money is.
That's correct. And right now, we're putting a lot of money into the public safety building because there's been quite a few leaks.
Are they rubber roofs, PVC? Could they be patched? Who knows?
The bucket under it?
Let's get some tar and just tar it up.
I don't think so.
I could figure it out. All right, I'm done.
Anybody else? Questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I really like this, first of all. I like all the tabs, I keep clicking around, so, and I've been listening to you too, but when we were on the graphs one, the school debt, that's the override, that will go down. It's not like our mortgage, right? It's not an even payment, it will go down, right?
For which one?
I'm not sure, but that way they how do they structure that bond when they start? Like, doesn't the bond decrease each year? It's not
It
the
does.
same amount, yeah.
That's correct, and you
Okay.
can see how the payments get smaller and smaller and smaller
Right, so.
over each fiscal year.
So could we kind of like show for taxpayers' knowledge, like the override, how long will it take it to come down a little bit more? I think people are really hating the bump. I mean, it was a big blip because the whole weight of it hit in the last 2 quarters of the bill. So it seemed like, if you were paying out of pocket and not through your mortgage, it must have seemed like, what's going on in the town? Did we just build 4 new buildings and, 5 new schools? So it'd be nice to get some information that, not this detail, but I thought that graph could be maybe all played with a little bit that shows the debt. Yes, that kind of a thing that kind of simplifies it a little bit, so maybe not that complicated one, because the level that you operate at is far more complex than the everyday person. But I think for people to just get a sense of what is above the tax rate right now for debt service. The rest of the debt is under, it's within our budget. But we do have a couple of things on top, right? Still the Bagnell addition.
So that's the exempt.
Yep,
So
okay.
exempt is excluded debt,
Yes,
and that doesn't impact the override, it impacts the tax rate up until the life of the
right.
borrowing.
But it will continue to go down every year, too.
That's
so-
correct.
But it will take a while, it looks like.
And then anything that's placed on an override, as you're stating, is forever, unless you do an underride.
Correct, yes, I knew that one. But those are all debt exclusions.
So you'll see that the gray line is non-exempt, the orange line is self-supporting, which is mostly the water and sewer.
Yep.
And the blue is exempt.
Okay, so that looks kind of level for a while. Long time.
It
But
is, and
But
there's
it does
also,
go down a little bit, right?
and the purchase of 150 Center Street is also something that we'll be carrying until 2035, I believe.
Unless we repurpose it.
That is correct.
Okay. And that's where that grant comes in.
It could be potential for exploring other options, yes.
Okay, good, thank you. This is a lot of information. And I saw the the list for this year is there too.
Exactly.
Right.
Jason?
No, I'm good. She answered my question.
Dan, anything?
Yeah, so we have three exclusions, debt exclusions for people listening, right? We have Center Street, AKA Strawberry Fields, right? We have the Bagnell, $7.5 million, right? The Center Street was $3,625,000 we borrowed, and then $7.5 million for Bagnell.
So we have a couple. We have the Center Street, we have the fire truck, we have one of the Bagnell borrowings, and then we also have the new middle school.
Yeah, just so people know. I mean, the fire truck was what, $750,000 principal?
It was 734,000, yeah.
And what is our total owed on principal on the new 7 through 12 school?
For the Bagnell School or for the
High school.
high school? I don't know, I'd have to
Middle
double
school, high
check
school.
on that. It's one of our
Just want
new-
people to be aware of how much debt we have in total and how it all adds up.
So we have overall $2.9 million worth of debt for the fiscal year that we're carrying for both with the principal of all of the projects. And that's what we're showing here.
Well, that portion of the high school's gotta be more than $2 million.
No, yes, for the overall
So is
project.
that just the current portion, the current
Exactly, so we're only
obligations?
looking at it from a year-by-year basis, not from the entire,
On the total. So we're
Just
paying
because-
a little over $2 million to service the debt exclusion items
and
only.
that's what you see right here. So the breakdown of this, the Groveland share of excluded debt. So you have the 2.2 million, and then you have the non-excluded debt, which is the $611,000. And then that breaks down, and like we said, some of it's on the ratepayers for water and sewer,
No.
but backed by the town, and the others is part of the PRSD capital budget. So we don't manage that, but yet we get a capital assessment from the business manager, and we're responsible for providing those funds in order to take care of that debt. And then we have our own debt, which you can see is labeled as town budget.
Okay, I understand.
On the new school, is the cost fully covered by the override that we passed at the time?
Yes, I don't believe they're looking for any changes at this
No,
point. in
no,
time.
but it's covered from the override, well, what was it, 3 years ago?
Debt exclusion, you mean?
The debt exclusion, yes.
Okay. Anybody else got any questions? Nobody.
So the hope is essentially, as, you know, we did have a capital improvement committee. The capital improvement committee has no members, so by default, the Board of Selectmen is the capital improvement committee. I know it's a lot of information, and I didn't expect us to make any decisions or determinations this evening, but it would be extremely helpful if the Board of Selectmen could review this a little bit more in detail. If you wanted to bring in any specific departments to have any conversation about what they're proposing for projects, we can then revisit this, hopefully maybe at the first meeting in December, and start making some recommendations as to what you would like to see, whether or not you would like to utilize free cash for anything, ARPA monies for anything, just based upon some of the information and material that the departments had put together. And in that timeframe, I also hope to have a meeting with the facilities coordinator and get a little bit more information concerning the Bagnell and get some more concrete figures and you know, rectify what we had taken care of as part of the drinking water project,
Okay,
if I may ask.
Dan?
Yeah, I mean, this column here, it says funding source, it's blank. So I just wrote in Santa Claus, but where we gonna get the money for all of these, multi-millions in projects here?
So that's why it's a determination based upon project need and whether or not you would like to utilize free cash, stabilization fund, capital funding, or American Rescue Funds, or whether or not you feel as though you would like to bond for these projects based upon the cost of the project and the life expectancy of what it is that you're looking for, or whether or not you would like to just keep these projects on a list and you would not like to allocate any funding for them.
I would like to know how much we have in each and every one of those funding sources so that we could make a decision. What do we got?
So we have the 666 estimated as of free cash, 1.3 for the stabilization fund, 340 for the capital, and 450 for the American Rescue, for a total of about $2.7 million.
We've been hitting stabilization, and we whacked it a couple of times, I think we did, and general rule of thumb, it ought to be, what, 10% of our overall budgets? We're below the shallow water mark, in my opinion, of about $2 million, so I don't know that we can keep going to the well.
We've only taken like 100,000 out of stabilization.
It was $180 or 200 last year.
I thought it was
Oh.
it more than one? We did it for the assessment. I did have,
You have something on that, Rebecca?
I don't. I can go back and
when we
pull the,
went back to those meetings and Greg assessed us more money, we went to the fall
so
town
about
meeting.
$240,000 came from stabilization
did,
fund
so
in the
you're
last
right,
budget cycle.
240.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
the last special town meeting
Yep,
in
that's what I
December.
had.
Well,
Yeah.
we did what we did, you know, and that's what it's for, so just maintain some sort of stability and continuity of services without, you know, a roller coaster ride. But, you know, I mean, as we get below $1 million, I mean, that's the, what if we really have an emergency? I mean, you know, so.
It may not be the time.
Yeah, I don't know that we ought to hit 1.3, that's my opinion on that, unless the, you know, the roof is just, the buckets can't get all the water. But, what is the other thing there, 600?
That's the free cash estimate that we're projecting.
Really?
Yep. She's doing a good job.
So we should refund some money to the taxpayers? Anyways,
Don't get carried away.
you know, a rebate for everybody, a
We would
Christmas
just end up
present,
taking
or a
it
holiday
back in the
present,
next
whatever
month.
your denomination. And then it says, what's the 400 and change?
That's the American Rescue Funds.
Yeah, how long do we have to spend that? What's left on the clock?
So we have until 2024 to allocate and 2026 to expend.
Is there more coming, or that's it?
No, not to my knowledge.
Have all of the department heads been, you know, consulted? Do they have any imminent or urgent needs for those funds? Or is it just,
Every
you know,
single project that you,
everybody's okay right now?
every single project that you see here was listed for 2024. And I was the one who tried to go through and kind of push things out based upon need and based upon what I've been seeing.
So is there a triage? Could you prioritize these in your opinion? Or, I mean, I just, from my perspective, whatever we pick, if we leave somebody out, they're gonna say, what about me? And that would be my normal human reaction too. Hey, what about me? You know,
Of course.
I need a backhoe or whatever, you know? So what is really just urgent? I mean, I think the roofs and maintaining the structural and the integrity and the tightness of the buildings is important.
Agreed.
Right, because if you let water and ice in, you're just gonna cause more problems than you peeling an onion at some point, you gotta rip it all apart, so, I don't know if this board can come up with some sort of priority, or if, somebody wants to, you know, chime in and advise us as to what needs to be done now.
Actually, your worksheet is, actually make me understand what that, some of our school assessment is. So This piece here that we're getting assessed 52% because West Newbury paid off their share, is there any value to us paying off our share to get it out of our assessment? Would we save interest? Because that's the piece of the assessment I didn't understand where it was coming from and why. On the school, the February 2012 middle school roof and boilers, the middle school we just tore down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're still being assessed for it, which means we're still paying interest on a building that we don't have anymore.
Exactly. So there's other types of things that we could do, such as utilizing some of those monies to pay down the remaining. And I believe that when I was taking a look at it, that we would be able to save about $40,000 in interest on the boilers, which doesn't expire until FY '23, and then a little bit less for the auditoriums that'll expire in FY '29 for 2,100. So you're not looking at a huge expense, but as Kathy just mentioned, both of those have been torn down. They no longer exist. So we're now accumulating interest on something that serves us no purpose. And it might be best to kind of handle that now.
As long as we're not gonna get new debt with a higher interest rate than the old debt. If the old debt's at 2% and we have to borrow at 3 or 4 or 5,
No,
then
no,
we
pay
might wanna,
for it.
we might wanna keep the old debt.
No, I'm talking about taking the ARPA funds and paying it off. West Newbury paid off their share, so on our assessment, that's why Merrimack and Groveland are splitting this, so we're continuing to pay interest.
What's the interest rate? I'm
But
driving
we're
at.
paying interest on a building that doesn't exist
I
anymore. We
get
don't
that,
use.
but if it's at 1 or 2%, and
It's
then
not 1
we
or
go out and
2%.
borrow at 5% on a new,
We
on a new piece of
wouldn't borrow for that. It's
equipment.
only
We
$40,000.
wouldn't borrow, we'd
You
save.
own-
Oh, it's only 40 in total?
Well,
Yeah.
it's for the total amount,
The principal balance. on it.
$217,000.
All right, so that's gonna knock out half the relief funds.
But how much interest do we save?
Again, it's only $40,000.
What's the interest rate, please?
So the interest rate is,
I don't see it.
The point I'm trying to make is if we pay off $200,000 in principal and we're saving 2%, for instance, right?
What did I do?
And then
Oh
we're
my
forced to
God,
go
I got it.
borrow money at a higher rate, then it
I
doesn't
got
make
it, Mike.
sense to
I'm
prepay
good
it.
at this. Thank you.
Drag it out, and I understand the building's gone, I get it, but that's an emotional decision. So what's your cost of capital?
It's not emotional, it's cost of interest for something that we don't even have.
I understand
We're
that.
shelling out the taxpayers'
But
dollars
if you
for something that-
substitute that debt for new debt at a higher rate, then it doesn't make sense to pay off the old debt.
Well, yes, but you don't have to buy everything on the list.
Jason, you had a
Yeah,
question?
'cause I completely understand where Dan's coming from, because if we use those funds to pay off the debt that we have versus buying a new piece of equipment that we would have to go out for and borrow the money for, then you're borrowing money
Double the
at a
rate.
much higher rate than what you would what you could carry.
Okay, but
Makes sense.
if I could explain again, this debt, if I'm understanding it right, it's not excluded. So it's taking money away from our town budgets. It's one of the reasons that in our assessment, we get assessed this extra share that West Newbury doesn't get. And it's cutting up our other budgets. So again, this is something that you at least to think about. Don't just write it off and say, oh, we'll just borrow more money. This is something that's happening that we've been paying on, that I've been looking at and not understanding until our town administrator put it together like this. And now it's crystal clear to me what's going on here. So our budget is extraordinarily tight. There's never enough money, and this is not a debt exclusion. We don't get extra money to pay this debt. We're taking it away from other town budgets for a building that no longer exists. I think it's at least worth thinking about as an item.
Mr. Chair?
Dan, go ahead.
I'll think about it, but,
Thank you.
but we need to know if these other items here require us to borrow more money at a higher interest rate. If the answer to that is no, then I agree with you, Kathy. If the answer is we're gonna borrow at a higher rate, then it's just debt swap. I don't care if the debt's in my right pocket or my left pocket. I care what the interest rate is on it. So it's similar to this. If you got a 3% mortgage and then you go out and refi at 6%, and it's the principal's $100,000, it's still the same debt swap. It doesn't matter if it's on the old house, the last house, it doesn't matter. It's $100,000 in debt. Okay, so you don't necessarily need to connect it to what was disposed of or was torn down. Okay?
Yes.
Debt is debt.
Yes.
It does not matter how you label it. It does not matter. What is your interest rate on it? What is your cost of capital? And how much do you carry in terms of principal?
Actually, no, I think you need to look at it like over a 10 to 20-year frame before you make that decision. Because when you look at what's happening in the budget, and you, don't laugh, it's.
I am going to laugh because
No,
I don't think you understand
No, of
basic
course,
finance.
excuse me.
I don't think
Oh, really? You don't think?
Yes, I do. I
And,
don't
know,
think you
yeah, I
understand basic
totally
finance.
understand basic finance. Okay, you're an accountant, I'm a
I'm a
financial
CPA and a lawyer,
economist.
you know? I mean,
I'm an economist,
undereducated
okay,
compared
so-
to some school teachers, you know?
So, what did you just say?
That's exactly what I said.
What did you say? Go ahead, say it
I said
again.
compared to some school teachers, if that's what you're inferring.
So do you think you're higher educated than I am just because I
I
switched
think
careers to
you're
teach school?
condescending.
Hold
and
on,
you-
I
Dan,
think-
let her finish.
Yeah, I just think that what you need to do is to look at the whole package, look at the debt, look at our debt schedule, because I get where you're coming from on interest rates, but it's not all just that. It's this piece of our budget that we're chewing up, we're getting assessed every year, and it varies depending on our student population. So if we got 52% this year, it could be 55% next year. It could be 58% the year after that. It's not fixed. Okay, so we could be avoiding, as our student population goes up higher than Merrimack's, we're going to pay more of this.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, go ahead.
what I object to is her tone that what I need to do. I don't need to be told what I need to do. Okay, Kathy?
Okay.
I don't need to be told what I
Fair is fair,
need to do.
as long as you-
Okay? So that irritates me, straight up.
Okay, he's got the floor.
All right? Well, what I need
Well,
to
in
do.
response, he irritated me by saying, I don't understand. I do understand what
You
I'm
told
talking
me I
about.
need to look at the big picture. You don't think I look at the big picture? I want to know the cost of capital.
I think we'll declare a truce, but again,
Okay.
be respectful.
Rebecca, the 5-year capital plan. You said you moved items out in different areas. Do you have the department heads or the board's recommendation? How much do they differ from the way you moved them out to 2028?
So in terms of what you're seeing for the cruiser, the police chief automatically every year for the last few years has put a cruiser as part of his fleet management plan, and so we funded that through free cash for the last couple of years. So that's what you see there. So that's why it's the continuous. The generator was something that was brought to our attention. I didn't consult per se, but we did take a look, and when we talked to the gentleman about whether or not how long it had, he said that it didn't need to be replaced right away, but it's something we should put on our list. So just going down through there, I mean, there's some of them that we actually, I talked to the departments with, and some of them I just kind of tried to spread out thinly. And then, as Dan had mentioned, a lot of the stuff that we also tried to do is we tried to get an understanding of what other departments needed, town hall needed, whether or not the cemetery needed something, whether or not the fire department needed something. So you're looking at a brand new pumper truck, you're looking at an HVAC system, you're looking at the school getting their courtyard, you're looking at the highway getting their swap loader, all funded through ARPA. So trying to fund as much as we possibly can in a thoughtful manner in terms of addressing all department needs. So taking into consideration that and just looking at the quotes and understanding what is being requested. In some cases, I did talk with the departments, and in other cases, I didn't think it was necessary, but can certainly go back and do so.
Okay. No, I was just wondering what their original requests were, and
All of them were 2024.
all of them 2024. One thing that maybe you can refresh my memory. I see police station entry doors. I thought I saw another one on here.
The central fire station doors out front here.
Yeah, I didn't see that on here. Oh, yeah, they do. Did we take care of the library doors? There was a problem with the library door. We took care of that in the last budget.
Yes, we did.
Okay. Anybody else? Nobody? How do we want to take a look? We'll take a look at it and.
If we could take a little bit more of a look at it individually and maybe reconnect at our first meeting in December and have a little bit more of a conversation, that would be appreciated.
Okay. We'll do that. We'll put that out on for the first meeting in December?
If we could.
Is this in priority yet or not in priority, the order of these things? It's not in
They're done, if you can see, by, all police, all fire, all public, so
Okay.
it's not necessarily priority, but in terms of the funding year would be the priority. I know that the library is really struggling right now with their HVAC being completely undersized and causing some other issues, you know, stuff like that.
Okay, we all set on that? We'll look that over. Excuse me, Rebecca will schedule that for the first meeting in December. And next is the Pentucket School Committee state of the presentation of the overview. And we have a copy of the slides that were given out, presented at the meeting. Kathy, I know you were there. You want to start?
Yeah, it was just a informational overview. Select people were on the stage, so we were allowed to ask questions, which was good. They did give us a staffing overview of all the elementary schools, so you can see that the staffing, classroom-wise, is rather tight right now, for the elementary schools. They spoke about some upcoming problems, and there was a new, I forget the initials of this place, a new place that's raising special ed tuition 14% or so.
So it's the Operational Services Division, OSD, and they approve private special education programs for purchased by cities and towns. And they are looking for a 14% increase. So per their information, it was an additional $546,000 that would be added to their budget right off the bat.
Right, that was like the one big item, I thought, sort of, that they brought up.
I think the other alarming one, as you had mentioned, was the student classroom sizes for kindergarten, first grade, and second grade. And then additionally, they had mentioned the heating costs being serviced by National Grid. There's a little unknown there, especially with the new school and what that impact will be. And then the standard reimbursement rate, transportation, and state assistance.
Right. And so I did ask them about reimbursement on that 14% increase, and I believe they said that they would get the circuit breaker on that, but not until the next year. Because there's a year delay in that.
That was my understanding.
Yeah. So there is a little bit of an upward trend in the student growth in the elementary schools. There's a couple of like bubbles there, a few grades. And they talked about, you know, at a school like Page School, there's only 2 teachers per grade. So you really can't cut a teacher. You have a classroom of 35 or something, you know, that's just not manageable. And they did list the adjustments that they made to their budget. I forget which slide that was on. It was one of the first slides, or?
Trying to find that.
They did.
But what positions they cut?
Well, yeah, we don't want not the positions they never filled, but the positions that they had that they got rid of.
These are these ones.
Okay, so they got rid of the JV sports and a Bagnell kindergarten teacher, Bagnell 6th grade teacher, .4 art teacher at Page School, middle school nurse, which I think is that the one that's causing them problems on field trips? For some reason, they're having trouble
That's
doing
correct.
a field trip because they have to have a certain number of nurses per students for teachers to administer medication or something. High school English teacher, high school math teacher, high school middle school chorus teacher, high school middle school art teacher, high school wellness, .2 music, Sweetser kindergarten, Sweetser first grade, 2 para-educators, although now they claim they can't find people to hire as para-educators. So they cut, and now they're trying to hire, and they can't find anybody. And they also said they're trying to hire 2 special education teachers, but they can't find anybody. So, I mean, their balancing act is similar to ours. When I think about it, you know, if you look in our town hall into our offices, we have 1 or 2 people in most offices. You cut a position, we don't have a department. That's the struggle that we're all facing. We're kind of facing the same thing as them, and I'm glad that they opened up dialogue. So hopefully we can have conversations and perhaps additional funding can be freed up towards the school. Help out with that special education, 500,000, that would be nice. See something on that. They didn't really mention any other overriding concern except not to have to cut anymore. You know, especially at the elementary schools. And they are charging the athletic fees. Those are in place, and those, they did not propose to take them out that I heard. I kind of feel like we're in the same boat. We're all in this together. We have this balancing act, and we're just trying to figure out how to hold it all together.
Mr. Chair, can I ask Kathy a question?
Yeah.
Sure, go ahead.
I wasn't at the meeting, I read the slides, and I think I understand. But was there any discussion on whether or not the school committee anticipated another Prop 2.5 override request come the spring, or is it too early for them to make that call?
I don't specifically recall a slide that said override, for which I was glad. They did appoint a liaison, or actually communication liaisons, right? We have 3 now, right? Our school committee member, is it Elena? I forget the 3 people that volunteered from the school committee.
I don't
So
recall.
anyway, they're trying to create more communication with the towns, which is good, because I think we need to all like compare notes and say, okay, here's where we are, here's where you are, here's what we can do. I certainly would not like to see them have to reduce an elementary school teacher again. It does look like it's not sustainable to do that again. The population at the elementary, the student growth, the bubbles are still in there. They're gonna be coming up. But I mean, if we wanna write to our state about this 14% increase on some agency we've never heard of that would force a $500,000 increase onto a school budget that's barely sustainable it's absurd.
And they're sending out refund checks right now, because there's a surplus.
Well, yes, but this private agency services public school children. I don't see where a 14% increase can come into play. You know, children are entitled to their services, whatever they need, but the public pays for it at 14%. We don't have that until next year, I guess. I mean, maybe we can ask them about circuit breaker if we can get something extra.
Anything else?
Yeah, I just, things seem to be tight for a lot of people, and we can't keep up with inflation. You know, disclosed inflation's at 8%, but I don't know what people are buying that's up 8%. Seems like grocery and fuel is up 30%. I think it's more like 30%, but depends on your spending habits. So we can't chase that rabbit around the track, you know. It's like chasing Swifty. So I think the hard reality for a lot of us is we have to just make do with what we have, count our blessings, and just try to maximize value and efficiencies, and see what we can do to shuffle the deck. On the one hand, you know, I could pay more in taxes, but you know, every time we get a tax bill, it's a pay cut for somebody, whether it comes out of their Social Security check or fixed income, and not everybody has the means to do it. So, you know, there's a balancing of needs in public service, and there are elderly people and people that don't have the means to keep paying for the schools. And I have 3 kids in the school, so yeah, I get value, you know, because we use the services. But I think it's okay. My son plays basketball, and I've paid beaucoup dollars for AAU basketball over the years and other programs. So, you know, user fees might be a fair way to go. If you get more, you pay a little more. But somehow it has to be a combination of, you know, sources of funding, and there has to be some compromises. It just can't be, you know, an override and chase the escalations in costs. I don't think it's sustainable, and a lot of people get hurt, and I don't think that anyone that's lived in this town for decades should have to sell their house because they can't afford the taxes. So I hope the school committee looks at the override vote in May and, you know, really give some deference to it and look at that, and I hope they don't come back in May, unless it's an absolute emergency. And I understand, you know, children have needs, but, you know, I see some programs over there, and I look at what they cut. I think primary education is far more important than secondary education. You know, you learn to read, and then you read to learn. So I think the kids that are older are more adaptable, and there can be more kids in a lecture hall and say, you know, recalculus or geometry. It's easier to juggle those. I don't know what the state guidelines are for maximum pupils in a classroom, but I think they need to get creative and try to juggle the schedule. But, you know, I don't think they should be cutting any math or English teachers in the elementary schools. That ought to be an absolute last resort. But again, you know, I'm on the school committee, and seems like they spread it out amongst the high school and the elementary school. I don't see any administrative cuts here unless I'm missing it on a slide. Why didn't they try to cut some costs out of the administrative part of the budget? You know, is there anything they can do with some cost sharing in terms of health insurance and benefits? Did they look at restructuring or maybe renegotiating the collective bargaining agreement? I don't know if they put everything on the table. I have more questions than answers.
Anybody, Kathy?
Yes. Well, I think that the first place to start is that we have to show up. We have to go to these meetings. I was the only person there from Groveland. The other towns all had 2 select people there. You have to start the conversation to see where or if there's any way to make this balancing act work. I mean, I'm not going to try to micromanage the school budget any more than I expect them to micromanage our town budget and tell us what services to cut. I mean, we have expenses that go up more than 2.5%. We know that, but we're fortunate in that within our small budget and our departments being cooperative, we do the balancing act. But the thing that we need to understand with respect to the school budget is that it's not just our vote. It's a 2 out of 3 vote. That's what we signed up for when we regionalized, and that's what we have to live with. So we need to be aware that if we feel that it's heading in that direction, there's a good probability that we might still have to pay our share even after conversing with the school. And certainly, I would go and speak to them and let them know, but it would help if more members of the board would go to meetings and converse with them, because conversation is what opens doors, and maybe there are things we can do to help them out with this new cost that they're trying to absorb with the cut in transportation. It didn't look to me from the slides like they were adding anything extra. But then I come back to the conclusion also that once we vote the assessment, they can move the money. The school committee controls the line items. We don't. We vote an assessment. That's all we have control over. And 2 out of 3 towns passed this assessment. So we need to be in the conversation with them. So we need to be aware of what's coming down. At this meeting, they didn't tell us specifically. He talked about a 1.5% increase on a $49 million budget. Is that it? But for us, that kind of increase on our $20 million budget is far more, far more. And I did point that out. I did say this is the difficulty. You know, to you, what is 1% to us is so much more, so much more. And those of you that have been around a long time have seen what's happened when an override passed in 2 towns and not here. And we went to cut back services. We went to reduced operating hours in our town buildings, in our library, reduced police, reduced highway workers. Everybody who's been here a long time was here for that. It was not a good time. It was not a good time. So I just encourage the board to, more we can talk with them and figure out if we can petition the state for them or do anything, we should start doing it now, not later.
Well, slide, on page 17, slide 34, the budget process timeline from the school. There's not much till late December. Departments present to the school committee on the needs, and then December, January, budget's presented to the school committee. And then the governor's budget deadline, March 2nd, mid-March, budget is certified by the treasurer and sent to the Pentucket towns. So we just gotta keep an eye on the timelines.
Well, we have a liaison, so we could invite them to our budget meeting. I mean, they invited us, we could return the invite, see if anybody from the school committee will come.
Yep, good idea. Anybody else? Jason, anything?
When it comes to petitioning the state, and to Dan's point, in terms of protecting the elderly, it would be really nice to see them step up and aid in protecting the elderly when you talk about the state and how much money they've collected, and you talk about a circuit breaker tax for the elderly that's just not adequate and doesn't keep up with the inflation or the additional funds required for the schools. And that's someplace I think that the state could really improve on. And that would make it a lot easier for the people that can afford to step up and make our schools better, to do so without hurting the elderly population that's been here over a long period of time.
Thank you. Anybody else? No. So we'll keep an eye on the timeline, and maybe we could get the school committee in for a joint meeting at some point. Anything else on that? Nothing. Moving on. Elm Park, arborist review of elm trees, and Mark, one that he's not here tonight. Rebecca, did I see somebody down there looking at the trees down there this morning?
Yes, so I did talk to Selectman Parento, who had mentioned this as a concern of his, so I talked to the the highway superintendent, and he had initiated a conversation with an arborist, and he had put together an assessment that I can share with the board, and maybe we can discuss that at the next meeting when Selectman Parento is back.
Okay, is he gonna do the work?
So we just put together a proposal, so we would need to fund the actual review in detail if we wanted to move forward with that.
Okay. Is that something that has to go out to bid?
It depends on how much it costs, but I would imagine.
Can I say something?
Sure. Identify yourself so that the 500,000 people watching on TV know who you are.
Diane Plentimere, 22 Mill Street. I know when those trees were planted, they were specifically the new type of elm trees that are not disease resistant. They're Liberty elms. And elm trees, as you know, grow in a vase shape. The limbs grow up. So you don't really need to cut bottom limbs unless they're getting in the line, in the electrical lines, or there's a problem with that. But just know that elm trees grow with their limbs up. And it's unlikely that there will be an issue with the limbs of the tree. The trunk will get taller, the limbs will grow up. That's all.
Thank you. There was an issue with the trees during the winter, with the last year or the year before, where there was several limbs that broke off because of the weight. Mike, do you remember, was that last year or the year before, 2 years ago? Yeah, they got damaged pretty good.
And I think it's because of the way that they V out, it
Yeah.
pulls and it causes the tree to split. And I think that's what happened with the last one, and I think that's what Mark wanted to try to prevent and preserve. So I think the trimming would be more the tops to prevent the heavy loads of snow from splitting the trees.
That's a good point.
Okay. Moving on. Town administrator time. Rebecca,
Yes,
you have the floor.
I have a few items. I will try and be brief. I just wanted to let the board know that we are receiving a $60,000 rebate for the HVAC system that we installed at Town Hall. So that's a nice little return. Also, I wanted to recognize Pumpkin Fest and say that overall it was a success after having had a 2-year hiatus. There was a lot of people who attended, and we made a lot of notes for next year. And as such, I just wanted to say thank you to a couple of people who were instrumental in making it all possible. Ruth Rivard, Sarah McGrath, and Teresa Dunn were instrumental in the planning phases and helped pull all the details together. Not having been here in the past, it was very helpful to have them give me some guidance as to what we should expect and what people would expect. The others I wanted to recognize are Steve McPherson, Annie Schindler, Bergen Daly, Darcy Lepori, Sean Hood, Chris LaCory, and Lisa Chandler. Also, some of the sponsors and those who have participated, Dunn Landscaping, Collins Family Tree, Noonan's, Selectman Ed Watson was kind enough to help with the tractor rides, Daniels Electric, R&D Site Development, the Groveland Garden Club, the Friends of Easy Park, Friends of the Council on Aging, Norwood Insurance, and Your Place and Ours. There's plenty of others who had participated in some way, shape, or form, and we're very grateful for the volunteer efforts and having a community as great as Groveland is. Then I just wanted to let you all know that November 21st will be the joint meeting with the Finance Board. So we have a couple of items that we will need to address with the Finance Board. So that will be the setting of the FY24 budget goals. And then as part of that conversation, I would really like to also have us explore some financial policies that we would like to have put in place. Not to add anything additional, but just some things like, anti-fraud, which is something the auditors had flagged in the management review in the past, taking a look at exactly all the things we were just talking about, levels of free cash, levels of debt, and, how we grant manage and the grants that we go for and what the repercussions are such, and just give us a little bit of guidance on decision-making and outlining objectives in order for us to move forward. Also at that meeting, I think it would be very helpful to have the Pentucket Regional School Agreement discussion with both the Finance Board and the Board of Selectmen present to provide some feedback. I know that's been an ongoing conversation in multiple different meetings, but to actually bring it back to the boards as a whole so that we can collectively come up with some recommendations that we would like the school administration to take into consideration. And then to let you all know about some upcoming construction activities. As you probably saw today, Route 97 sidewalks are in construction. We will be sending notice to a couple of homeowners about driveway use. So the highway superintendent is working on that. We're hoping to get the sidewalk from Parker to Birchwood this construction season, and then we will be continuing from Birchwood to Gardner the next construction season, which will be most likely in the spring. Highway will be personally addressing all of the drainage in between those construction dates, but there should be minimal impact. And then finally, there was the top coat was put on the community trail. So we are getting very, very close to a actual official opening. And we're hoping that will be done by the end of the month. And then the dog park is also nearing completion, and we have the fountains that should be coming in, and we're working on the path along the dog park as well. And we hope that will be open by the end of November, early December.
Very good. Any comments?
You have a question?
Go.
What's the status of the new law firm posting?
About I'm sorry?
When are we gonna put a posting for,
For the law firm. So I haven't had a chance to actually take a closer look at an RFP, but I have talked to a couple of other law firms about potentially exploring some options with some assistance, just in the sense that we don't have a current contract with KP Law, so that nothing ties us to it. And from a procurement standpoint, we don't need to go out for bid for legal services. So, like we had said, we use Coppola and Coppola for tax title stuff, and not necessarily KP Law. And we use KP Law for some of the, other things such as land use and labor, but maybe exploring another law firm for some of the general town meeting type of situations without really having to commit to anything. So,
HR services, just employment issues.
yep, labor law.
Yeah. So how soon could a draft of that be done, and can we review it?
So I have a lot on my plate right now, so to go through the whole process of putting together an RFP is a little daunting. So I was hoping to kind of explore different proposals and different options without having to go out to a full RFP. But if the board would prefer, I can put other matters on hold and specifically go out for bid.
Well, the issue is, I think we should have some idea if we're gonna make some changes, before, the finance committee and us, and we meet, or we come up with the next year's budget. I mean, certainly long before then.
We
Can-
can. I don't necessarily think that it impacts our budget even if we would level fund it at this point in time. We are on an hourly basis with our current law firm. Their hourly rate has increased. Some of the law firms I've been talking to, their hourly rate is half of what KP is. So we could still get legal services and still get the representation that we need without necessarily going out and putting together a proposal and selecting one firm to do what we're looking for, or whether or not, like you had mentioned in the past, whether we bring legal services in-house, so exploring what, communities have for in-house and smaller law firms and what they can do in comparison to what a larger law firm can do based upon like a KP who has multiple attorneys on call for labor, land use, title, like all those different things. So I'm just trying to get us a different feel for other law firms that are out there that could help us in the interim and before we were to put together a more comprehensive bid for just one law firm.
Well, my thoughts were if we could put them on a retainer, then it's not necessarily a billable hour situation. So if you have a part-time, city solicitor, town solicitor type of situation, and those positions do exist in other municipalities, then they're just flat rate retainer. They have stipulations in there. It's it's not a blank check or a buffet necessarily,
Yeah.
but
Hold it till he's done.
at some point, I think we need to pick a direction, whether or not we're gonna post on a billable hour rate and shop for, see what's out there, but I think we ought to send some sort of advertisement out there and see what's available, because it's like hiring people. I mean, we can post a, like, treasurer position and get 3 resumes, or 2, or 1,
I agree. My one caution is that we don't use our
You don't know
law-
what's out there, how many snowplowing guys are out there,
But we don't use legal services.
So we don't know until we do it.
But we just don't, we don't
I know you'll.
have enough
Whittle it done.
legal work for somebody to be on retainer right at this point in time. Like, we don't have that much. We probably, if you think about it, we have maybe $1,000 every 2 months, maybe every month for legal services. It's not like right now we're in legal cases. Once we get into
I
more.
understand that. Well, when they happen, and you need immediate response. So we talked about it in the past, and I understand you got a full plate, but can we get some sort of artificial deadline that it'll be done before, the end of the year? Is that reasonable?
If you would like it done by the end of the year, it will be done.
I'd like it done by the end of the
That
year. I don't speak
stands.
for anyone else if that's reasonable. I don't want to be unreasonable.
Kathy, go ahead.
That's just one member of the board speaking. I like what I'm hearing from the town administrator. I think we have a legal budget. I think she manages it better than anybody that we've ever had before. And I'm completely confident that if we allow her the time that she's asked for to continue to work through this process, that she will come out with a very good plan for this town. And I don't want to set a deadline on it, because looking at the work that she's accomplished so far for us, and that's without an administrative assistant, without any help, with an unfilled position, I think she's doing above and beyond, and I don't want to artificially influence what she's using her best judgment to do, because I think she's doing a very good job for the taxpayers in Groveland, and they should know that she's saving us money all the time by getting grants, by watching the legal services, and that she's looking into it, which is all we asked her to do. We never voted to go out RFP or anything. We asked her to look into it. And the fact that she's looked into it is good enough for me for now. If we need a vote, I'd like to vote on it.
I got some items on that, just I'll share it with you, I'll get it over to you. Anybody else?
Yeah, can we put it on the
Jason,
agenda?
Let Jason first, he didn't weigh in yet.
I mean, I do understand where Dan is coming from, but I do agree that Rebecca is able to have a lot more flexibility and finds out much more about how the individual law firms, where their specialties lie, and who's gonna do the best job for the most affordable prices by searching and talking to and working with a variety of people at this time. And I think by pushing the issue, rushing the issue, I think it would potentially put the town in a bad situation where they don't get all their needs met and would still end up going and searching for the specialty areas where we would need it. But that's my opinion.
Okay. Anybody else? Dan, you had something?
Yeah, just following up,
Okay.
you know, I practice law, and law firms are vast and varied. And, you know, I was on the board several years ago, and I'm back. And so I have been involved with some of the legal issues as a selectman, and it's my opinion that we shop around. Okay? And I'm gonna leave it at that. Okay?
All right.
And if we don't have some sort of deadline, and not a rush deadline, it won't get done. And it hasn't been done in the last year and a half, and it wasn't done in the 2 years. And I hear people talk about it, and people out in the town, and I'm not the only one, okay? I'm serving the town by asking that we shop it.
Okay.
Point
Thank
of
you.
clarification,
Go ahead.
Paul, for information. So I just want to make it sure that for people that are listening or watching, that work has been done on this. You heard from the town administrator. She is looking into it. She has spoken to law firms and she's compared rates. She's aware of law firms that have a much lower rate than Copeland and Page that we might be able to use. And she has the latitude and flexibility, the way the budget is set up currently right now, to go out and hire somebody if she needed them for something that would fit our needs. So I think, I understand where Dan, where you're coming from, but we're not tied in by a contract to Copeland and Page, and work has been done on the issue as we asked. And that's what we asked for. We asked for this to be looked into, find out what we can do, and that is ongoing, and I'm good with that.
Okay. Rebecca, you had anything else? I'd just like to comment on the rail trail that you brought up. And Mike, maybe you can be prepared at another meeting to bring us up to date on a couple of things. You don't have to do it now. I keep getting asked constantly 3 questions that, and it's more, it's every week or so. The same 3 questions. Where are the people gonna park? One. Because none of the trailheads where they meet the roads is set up for parking, that I know of, unless you come up with something. The second thing is, people ask me, are they gonna have porta potties along there? And the third, who is going to be mowing or weed whacking around all of those fence posts that are set up along the trail? And if, I hope you're not looking to, or hadn't planned on having a highway department do it. If somebody goes out there with a weed whacker, that's gonna take 2 guys a day plus to go through that whole rail trail and cut around those fence posts. So there probably, is there a mechanism in place to get somebody to do that? No, I don't want you to do it now. I want you to give it some thought.
I can answer all 3 of those questions.
What's that?
I can answer all 3 of those questions.
Go.
So there will be no porta potties along the trail. And then the first one was in terms of parking. So we have, there's two plans. So one at the, near Etsy's on Main Street, where
Let me
the,
just interrupt you on that one. You're talking about the building that Eric Harper,
yes,
SD Lumber?
Estes, yeah.
The one that the town gave him a hard time as far as the permits, et cetera, and you're expecting him to come back and say, yeah, the town can,
No, I'm not talking about his lot, I'm talking about location. So his lot is across the street, the sewer pump station is. There's parking that's gonna be constructed in there. So not in his parking lot, but in that parking lot. So for area of residence, it's just on Main Street where his building is, just across the street. And that's one of the trail entryways before you go into the Havel side. Then also, we're looking to put forward a CPC application to actually create a parking lot over at Shanahan Field. One, it will accommodate a lot of parking concerns that we have with the soccer team, but also it's in close vicinity to the actual trail itself. So you're talking about a good chunk of parking that will be coming from that particular location. And then we're also exploring an opportunity down on King Street to add parking at one of an earlier proposed parking sites, but it's on National Grid property. So we're trying to figure out again what the parameters are there in terms of funding. But we are immediately going to be having parking right on Main Street at that location at the sewer pump station. And then hopefully if town meeting does pass for the Shanahan Field parking lot, you'll have additional parking at that location. And then in terms of the maintenance, there's not a formal agreement yet, but there's work being done with the Friends of the Community Trail as well as help that will be provided through the Highway Department. One of the requests for capital that the Highway Department had put forward is like an arm of some sort, and it like reaches over the fence and it takes care of some of the mowing. So they were utilizing that, and then in addition to using their, they have, I get them mixed up, but there's a tractor that they use for the sidewalk, so that would help with the plowing of the actual trail itself. But the Friends group will be helping with the maintenance, and that was something that was originally discussed at the beginning of this process. And so it's not solely on the Highway Department to do all of that work.
so you're looking for volunteers to do it.
The Friends group, just as much as all of our, unfortunately, all of our recreational fields. I mean, Groveland Youth Baseball takes care of Washington Park. We had the softball group and the Pentucket that take care of the Pines. I mean, we rely heavily on our volunteers.
Yeah, okay. All right, maybe you can expand upon that, like Baldwin Terrace, access, the bottom of Baldwin Terrace, access on the, and I don't know whatever happened to the old Fur Fish and Feather Club at the end of Baldwin Terrace. You take a right, and there was a building down there. I don't know whether the town owns that or whether it was privately owned.
No, it's still private.
Okay. Okay, maybe you can look into that. Thank you, Rebecca. Selectmen's time. Kathy, do you have anything?
Yeah, I went to Pumpkin Fest, and I thought it was amazing, and I'm grateful to everybody that did all the work, because I didn't do anything but attend. And it was wonderful. It was really, really well attended, lots of costumes, lots of pumpkins. Everybody who was there was very happy with what was put together by your group, your power group, your women power group, whatever you want to call them. I don't know if they have a name yet, but they did a great job, and it was a beautiful evening. It was just the way things should be. Can't ask for better than that. And it made me think back to like a year ago this time, you know, we were all struggling still. The town was struggling. Then we hired a town administrator, and now we have answers to questions, and things are rolling ahead. And I think, you know, town made a good decision to roll ahead with this position, because I think it's pulling our community back together again. And we're working still with a really short-staffed in almost every single area in town. Short-staffed. But at least we have somebody trying to coordinate it all, which is huge for our town. So thank you again.
Now, Jason, you got anything?
Yeah, you know, it's a sidewalk, but I'm extremely excited about the sidewalk on School Street.
Not any more than,
Almost in my living room.
so you don't need it.
It's coming close, the street's coming closer and closer and closer. Every time we do something on School Street, it's like, okay, we have those bushes, that's about it.
What's so special?
Go ahead.
I had the pleasure of sitting in on some of the department meetings and during the attempt to get the funding for that, and as well as the coordination of the light department to move the poles, the highway department to do some of the work. And I don't think any of that could have taken place without having somebody like Rebecca heading it up, making sure the funding got together, making sure that the light department was informed to remove or move poles, and to get them all working together. The level of communications and work that went into that was absolutely phenomenal. And to see it actually all coming together, so as it is, it's just really excites me.
Okay, Dan, you got anything?
I don't have too much. It's coyote hunting season right now through March. So everybody who knows me knows I just love those animals so much because they ate my cat. So get licensed, get after them. They're an invasive species, and legally blast away. We're lucky in this town. We border the Cranes Wildlife Management Area. It's a legal hunting area for pheasants and coyotes and deer. Deer season should be coming up. So we're lucky to have that resource in town. I think it's about 2,700 acres. Mike can fact check me on that, but it's vast, and it's that's a gem in this town. I think it's I've been out on the trails once in a while, and very few people out there. So that's my 2 cents on that. Use what Groveland has to offer, and certainly we have the rail trail and some other additions. But yeah, it's hunting season. It's fall.
Good.
Thanks.
I know you didn't have a license for fishing, but I hope you get a license.
Oh, I got a sportsman license, a dual license fishing and hunting. I didn't check the waterfowl one. Coyotes are tough to hit. Coyote means
It's after
trick.
midnight, I think.
I guess it means trickster, I guess, native language.
Okay,
So.
thank you. Just a reminder to everybody, the Veterans Day service, Friday, 10 o'clock, it's going to be inside the Central Fire Station. Anybody can show up, more the better. I know the last year they had a great crowd
They did.
over there. Other than that, I don't have anything, but it's 10 o'clock Friday morning, Veterans Day, one of the few holidays that are on a holiday. They've moved everything else. Old or unfinished business, I don't have anything. Other items not reasonably anticipated at the time of posting, I don't think there was anything there. There was?
You gonna mention elections?
Mention what?
Elections.
Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Tomorrow elections, I think we have,
a great idea.
5,500 registered voters. I'd like to see every single one of them vote tomorrow, no matter what your political leaning is. Just don't take democracy for granted. Get out there, vote, grab your neighbors, grab your friends. I got 3 18-year-olds now. I was hoping they were all registered Republicans. I guess I didn't do so well as a father there. Left. So anyways, whatever that's worth. Get out there and vote, make a difference, or don't complain as much as you used to.
Okay, correspondence. We have the May 5th, 2022 Board of Selectmen meeting minutes. June 15th, 2022 Board of Selectmen meeting minutes. October 11th, 2022 Board of Selectmen meeting minutes. October 24th, Board of Selectmen meeting minutes. And we have 2 thank you notes, one from Laurie from the Board of Health, and one from, if I can turn the page, one from Julie, the Assessor Manager, in appreciation to the Board of Selectmen for the ARPA funds. As long as everybody's all set, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn at 8:05.
A motion to adjourn?
What do we do with the minutes?
We read them.
No, we gotta read them and,
Oh, they're just draft, we're not voting on them.
correct. Correct.
Okay, I missed that, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It
Second,
was early on the agenda.
yeah, but we didn't have any.
You skipped over.
No, we didn't. There wasn't any.
No, Dan, what they're doing is they put them
You gonna second a motion?
The
I'll
second,
second the motion.
Okay.
and I'll tell
There's
you.
a motion and there's a second. All in favor of adjournment?
Yeah.
4 in favor, one absent. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, so Dan, they're giving us the minutes 2 weeks out, then we read them, then they move up to vote on them. So that's kind of like the new plan, so that we're not sitting there